Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. The thing nobody's talking about is how Canelo Alvarez is out here about to fight Terrence Crawford. I'm picking Crawford to win. I think that's a fight Canelo should easily win. Bigger man, been at 168 forever, doing the business. But I think Crawford's going to beat him because Canelo is under pressure to do something huge. Now, I've talked about all the reasons why Canelo is under pressure to do something huge. But the one thing I haven't mentioned, and I'm going to mention it now. Nobody's talking about this, so I figure I'll talk about it because I had somebody in the comments kind of remind me. And they said, hey, what about this? The number one reason why Canelo has to do the business is because he's been ducking David Benavidez. If he loses to Terrence Crawford, which I think is going to happen, right? He is going to look like the clown of the boxing world. The boxing fraternity is going to look at Canelo and they're going to say, no wonder he put the duck sauce on the carne asada. Because he knew effing around with David Benavidez would be life-threatening. So he went out here, was chasing Jake Paul. TURKI ALALSHIKH gave him $50 million more than what he would have made to fight Jake Paul, and say instead, come fight Crawford. TURKI likes Crawford. He wanted to look after Crawford. Crawford wants a big fight before retirement. Crawford truly believes he can win. Sounds like TURKI ALALSHIKH has convinced Crawford, whether win, lose, or draw, for Crawford to continue fighting. But Canelo cannot lose because everyone's going to say that's why he ducked David Benavidez. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if Canelo Alvarez loses to Terrence Crawford, the optics are going to be brutal. You know, not just because we all see it as an upset, you know, because it would be an upset. If Crawford beats Canelo, that's an upset. But it's just the years-long shadow cast by David Benavidez. For a large portion of the boxing public, the most glaring embarrassment wouldn't simply be that Canelo lost to a smaller man, moving up 2 weight classes. It would be that he lost to that man, Crawford, a small guy, instead of facing the bigger, younger, undefeated Mexican monster who's been calling him out for years. And Canelo said he'd been disrespecting him. That's why he won't fight him. Well, whatever, Canelo. The narrative that Canelo has sidestepped Benavidez, whether it's fair or not, is already deeply embedded in fan discussions. Look, we're talking about it right now. A Crawford win, Budzilla, will pour gasoline on that fire, making it look like Canelo gambled on the safer fight, but came up short. And that's exactly what he's doing. The Benavidez storyline is what makes this scenario so damaging. You know, you got to look, you just listen to the fans. You know, fans, they've heard the numbers. All kind of huge numbers being thrown around for Canelo to get in the ring with Benavidez. Reports of a $70 million guaranteed offer before pay-per-view. And Canelo's own public comments that it would take $150 million to $200 million to make the fight. To me, that sounds like he's pricing himself out, and that's exactly what he's done. But, you know, Canelo is a businessman, and he realizes that, hey, there's a high demand for this fight. And if y'all want me to get in the ring with the Mexican monster, Canelo knows he can make the money. But the perception, right, is that Canelo's willing to fight smaller men like Crawford, who, and we got to be real here, despite his greatness, is giving up size and weight, but demands an unrealistic payday to face the most dangerous opponent in his own division. Well, who was in his division and, ended up moving up. But I think David Benavidez was still cut back down to 168 to fight Canelo, even though he says he won't. I think he would. If Canelo loses to Crawford, that perception hardens into he ducked the real threat and he still got beat. And David Benavidez is going to be sitting back laughing, saying, you should have fought me, Canelo. Because if Canelo loses to Benavidez, fans would be more accepting of it. Losing to Crawford, I'm telling you right now, I look at the comments. These fans they're fanatics. They don't even want to entertain the idea of Crawford having a chance to beat Canelo. If he does beat Canelo, oh Lord, I think somebody's going to definitely jump into a river butt naked with man-eating crocodiles and swim across. Try to swim across, and they're going to get their ass chomped up. But when you think about it from a fan acceptance standpoint, which is hard for fans to accept it, to accept what Canelo's doing with Crawford, they would have preferred to have the Benavidez fight. But losing to Benavidez would be much easier to swallow for fans, for everyone who's supporting Canelo. You just got to understand a guy like Benavidez, man, he was a natural super heavyweight, now bubbled up to light heavyweight. He's physically imposing, undefeated champion, and his style is built to overwhelm you. He brings that pressure. He brings a high volume of punches. He has the high guard. He brings a lot of what Canelo brings, but he brings more than what Canelo brings. And he's bigger and longer. He's a serious threat to Canelo. Now, if Canelo lost to him, it could be framed as passing of the torch, which is exactly what it should be. The younger, bigger man finally toppling the established king is what Canelo's been for years. But if he loses to Crawford, I've been saying this, And remember, Crawford's moving from welterweight to 154, and he's never fought at 168. I just think it'll be seen as a humiliation. It would feed the idea that a guy like Canelo, not good at math, because he miscalculated. And he got the answer wrong. Let me just put it this way. Me looking at this, I run hills about 6 days a week. Y'all see I go live. I always have on the 25-pound weighted vest, and I go live and I talk. But sometimes, even a guy like me running with a 25-pound vest, I could choose the wrong hill. I can choose a hill where it takes me an hour to get to the top, and that shit can be disastrous because it's exhausting, And I think with Canelo, it could be a fact that he's miscalculated by fighting Crawford, choosing the wrong hill to defend, while he should have really went against a mountain, not a hill. And Benavidez, and even in a loss, I think his reputation would be kind of untouched. But he's going to get defeated by trying to climb a hill instead of trying to go and climb the mountain. That's crazy. You can almost picture the post-fight, imagery. Crawford's hand raised like in this thumbnail that I created. Canelo looking deflated somewhere in the crowd or on social media. David Benavidez shaking his head in disappointment. Not just because Canelo lost, but because the scalp he's been, chasing for years. The win that could have defined his own career was taken by someone else, a little small guy named Terrence Crawford, who really is the wrong guy getting in the ring with Canelo. So for me, Benavidez, I think it'll be a bittersweet moment. It's validation that, Canelo can be beaten, but frustration that he wasn't the one to do it. Now, this is why the pressure's on Canelo to destroy Crawford. That pressure on Canelo to destroy Crawford is immense, man. Every round that's competitive, even if Canelo wins the round, I'm just telling you, it's going to make Canelo look crazy. The exchanges that don't go clearly his way will be judged against the backdrop of, hey, You could have been fighting Benavidez, but you chose to get in here with Crawford. So he's not just defending his belts, he's defending his matchmaking choices. A dominant win over Crawford could quiet the noise, temporarily, but a loss would make the avoidance narrative deafening. Everybody would be talking about it. He avoided Benavidez because Canelo knew that he couldn't handle Benavidez, and now we all know because he lost to Terence Crawford. I wonder if Canelo can really rebuild his reputation if he takes a loss to Crawford. But if so, he would. If Canelo wanted to, if he loses to Crawford, a quick way to rebuild his reputation is to take the fight that he's been avoiding, which is David Benavidez. But the problem is he'll be in a position of weakness. I don't know how much A side Canelo will be if he loses to Crawford and goes to fight Benavidez. That's interesting. Well, one thing I do know is the financial hit will be just as real as, the hit on his reputation. A Canelo Benavidez fight after a Crawford loss, it's still big. It's kind of like looking at Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. We'd still watch it, but it's not the same monster it could have been. Just like Canelo and Benavidez, if Canelo loses, it's not the same monster it could have been. Now with Canelo, who was the undisputed champ, lost to a smaller man, that whole fight at 168 is a joke now if Canelo doesn't have any belts. And then there's this whole thing like with some fighters, even with Crawford, there's an aura of invincibility. And then Canelo has that at 168. But as far as being, the guy who's the top dog in the division who became undisputed in a year, that's going to be out the window. It's going to be gone. And with it, some of the leverage to demand, these astronomical guarantees that only a guy like Canelo could get because of his profile. And I'm going to tell you right now, instead of him being able to dictate terms, Canelo's going to find himself needing somebody like a Benavidez more than Benavidez needs him. Because that would be a huge reversal that could cost him tens of millions in guaranteed money and pay-per-view upside. That 70 million plus offer floated in the past would almost certainly shrink. I know TURKI ALALSHIKH can still probably put up some big money, but the fight would be framed not as the king defending his crown, but, for Canelo, it becomes more of a redemption attempt. Anyway, man, if Canelo loses to Crawford, it wouldn't be just a bad night at the office for Canelo. You know what I'm saying? It would be a career-defining misstep. All his critics are going to look like soothsayers with their crystal balls and shit. Anyway, Canelo better enjoy being the A-side fighting Crawford. Because if he loses, that A-side crap is out the window. At least if he's trying to fight Benavidez to redeem himself. And the embarrassment wouldn't come solely from the loss itself, but from the years of the build-up, the choices that led here, the knowledge that the fight fans wanted Canelo and Benavidez more than anything. But Canelo left it on the table, and the smaller man walked away with the glory, Terence Crawford. So it is what it is. But if you ask me, I think Canelo should be fighting Benavidez. He should have fought him a long time ago. But I think there's something deep down in Canelo that is part of him being a businessman. But there's a little bit of insecurity there too when it comes to him fighting David Benavidez. First and foremost, he's looking at the money because Canelo's always talking about if it makes sense. Meaning the money, right? But he's also a guy who's looking at the reward, but he's looking at the risk. David Benavidez is a huge risk to anyone. From 168 up to, I don't know if I want to say heavyweight quite yet, but up to cruiserweight. David Benavidez is a huge risk. And he said he could fight at heavyweight, but We know at cruiserweight for sure. And we also got to keep in mind that Canelo is really a smaller guy who's kind of grown up, who's kind of blown up and matured and settled into the 168-pound division. But boy, oh boy, if he loses to Terence Crawford, David Benavidez, his dad, all of the Canelo detractors are going to have a field day with this. He had a choice. He could have fought David Benavidez. All these years, the build-up, ducking him, making excuses to not fight Benavidez, fighting smaller guys, saying that he learned from Floyd, that he's the A side. Floyd forced him to get down to a weight that he didn't want to get down to, but Floyd was the A side. He had to do it. Now, since he became the A side, he's made fighters do the things he wants to do to make him comfortable and create a set of convenience for him when he's in the ring with him to where he has the upper hand. And when it comes to the business of boxing, look, I get it. It's just the climate that we're in. But boy, oh boy, fans are going to sit back and say, all of those years of buildup led us to where we are today. All that shit he left on the table. Money, the Benavidez fight, legacy, glory. He opted to fight a smaller guy, and the smaller guy walked away with the money, see the legacy, and the glory. And you better believe David Benavidez is going to laugh his butt off. Anyway, Canelo and Crawford. Canelo should be the favorite. Canelo has everything on the walls telling you that Canelo's supposed to win the fight with relative ease, but I think he's under a lot of pressure. I'm going to keep saying it, to get in there and do something amazing. And I already talked about the fans' expectation. I talked about Turkey ALALSHIKH's expectation. I talked about Canelo being haunted by the Bivol ghost and the way Bivol beat him and made him look normal, made him look like an amateur. And now you got this additional pressure of shit. If I lose to Crawford, in addition to those things, everyone is going to talk about he ducked Benavidez, and this is why he ducked Benavidez. So that's just something else that Canelo's going to have to deal with. And you know David Benavidez, and he's going to have a ball with it. Anyway, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. Canelo's putting that work in training camp to get in there and do the business to Crawford, but Crawford's putting that work in too. But David Benavidez, I got to keep it real. He even said that he thinks Crawford's a special fighter, but he doesn't think he'll beat Canelo. He thinks he'll have some spots. He'll look good in spots, but he thinks ultimately Canelo catches up to him. So if Canelo does not, that means David Benavidez was wrong. That's going to make David Benavidez look and feel crazy, because he's going to be like, damn, here I am thinking Canelo was better than Crawford, or at least too big for him. I gave Canelo more credit than he deserved. So what that does, if Canelo loses, that gives David Benavidez, immense confidence. See, and this is the thing, right? If Canelo doesn't fight Crawford, there's some suspense there. There's a question mark there, at least in David Benavidez's mind, about shit. If I get in the ring with Canelo, how's this gonna go? You see, because he really doesn't know. He believes in his skills, of course, but he doesn't know. But now you see Canelo getting there and lose to a guy like Crawford. David Benavidez is gonna tell himself, damn, I missed an opportunity. I would have killed him. If Crawford outboxed him, and especially if Crawford just happens to hurt him, Benavidez is going to feel like I would have done 20 times worse to Canelo. And Canelo robbed me of an opportunity to be the guy to beat him and to have basically the torch handed over to him. It's kind of like when I listen to Chris Arreola talk about Andy Ruiz. Chris Arreola always wanted to be the first Mexican-American heavyweight champion, and he came close, but close but no cigar. Then Andy Ruiz came along, and Andy Ruiz was able to do the business. And Chris Arreola was happy for him, but he was more like F, man, that should have been me. And I think that's how David Benavidez is going to be. He's going to be super happy for Crawford, like, man, I can't believe he did it. That Crawford is just a freak. He's an alien. But he's going to hit you with the comma, however. That should have been David Benavidez in there getting that win. Anyway, man, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. Canelo might as well take that fight with Benavidez, man. Even if he loses to Crawford, people aren't going to be afraid of him no more. People aren't going to have that respect for him no more. Canelo trying to rebuild, he might as well, if he loses to Crawford, and for some reason there's no rematch, he might as well go into the biggest money fight that he can get, because there is no more fear, concern. There is no more aura of invincibility at 168. There's no more nothing. So everybody going to be trying to get at him. And you're going to see Canelo career immediately start to decline. Because you better believe Canelo is going to lose some confidence too. Anyway, David Benavidez is out here saying right now, you lose that fight, you should have fought me, Canelo. Aha! Yo, y'all keep cool. I got things to do. In the breeze.